Welcome to Tales from the Dancefloor, a podcast exploring the lives and times of people from all walks of life who followed their passions and made careers out of DJing, producing, parties, dance culture, and the music industry. I'm Phil Morse from Digital DJ Tips. Let's get started. I'd like to welcome Laidback Luke to the podcast. Hello, Luke.
Hey, good to be here.
Good to have you here.
Yeah.
So, Luke, you have always been a DJ that's fascinated me personally because of your love of the art. You've always been vocal about the love of the art of DJing and always shared that everywhere I've seen you. And everyone who I've met who knows you has said two things about you. One, he loves the art of DJing. He loves to share the art of DJing. But two, he's got time for everyone he meets, his fans, people who want a piece of him. He makes everyone feel like they're the only person in the room for that 20 seconds they get to share in his life. And I think that's awesome. So firstly, I just want to say thank you for spending this time with us today here on the podcast. It's cool to have you here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
So we're in Amsterdam at the moment, which is where you're originally from, as we record this. So maybe a good place to start would be for you to tell us, you know, in your upbringing, which I'm going to guess was around here, at what point did DJing and music become a thing? At what point did you realize this whole thing existed?
Yeah. Well, I'm half Filipino. I was actually born in Manila in the Philippines. Due to my dad, who's Dutch, who is from here, he did voluntary work back in the day. And so he was stationed in several foreign countries. We lived in Africa for a little while, for instance. And when I was 4 years old, we settled out in the Netherlands. Music has always been very much a part of my family because I remember specifically being in the Netherlands, being 4 years old, and my mom, who always loved performing and singing, she would have these parties for acquaintances. She would invite everyone over and she would perform. She would perform several tracks, and she had everything, costume changes, and we used to have a curtain in the background which said the Lucilla Show, 1987, or no, I was 4 years old, 1980 something. And my dad, he used to do the background music for that. He would have a little drum computer, and he would play the guitar or the bass. He plays both with that. And so I came from seeing that. Very much musical family as well, especially from my dad's side. Whenever all the uncles came together, there would be music, there would be singing, there would be instruments. And later in life, I found out that the whole rest of the part of the family, I don't know, on my mom's side, is very musical as well.
It sounds like such a Filipino thing, what your mum used to do.
I guess.
It really does. In Digital DJ Tips, we have Joey lives in Manila. He's a Filipino. And what you just described, like, I can see him just kind of like, come on, tell me something interesting. You know,
yeah.
It sounds like the kind of thing.
Fair enough.
So you said that you remember being 4 and being in the Netherlands. Do you remember any of the bits you said before that? The kind of Africa and...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so... moving around gave you some pretty early memories then.
Yeah, I remember in Africa we had a huge mountain behind the house, and also in the garden of the house there were these 2 pipes that you couldn't go near because there were actual rattlesnakes or poisonous snakes in there. That's the stuff I remember.
I guess you would. Survival instinct says remember where the snakes are, right?
I also remember those Maasai people. In Africa, you have these people that cover themselves in red clay, and they have these long necks. And I remember hanging on my mom's shoulder at the doctor, standing in line to go into the office. And one of those stood next to us, and I can clearly remember that smell of, it's almost like a really old clay meets meat. kind of smell, but that always stuck with me.
Well, they say smells are one of those things that you never forget, don't they?
Yeah.
So you're a very young boy in the Netherlands, and I'm guessing that the Netherlands feels like home, right? There's no sense of anywhere else as being home. Although now we'll move on to the fact that you live in the States now.
That's right.
But this is where you're from, right? You feel Dutch.
Yeah.
So being brought up in Europe, being brought up in Northern Europe. It's at the heart of electronic music and has been since those times. So when did it first come onto your radar?
Coincidentally, yes. Well, it was a slow progression. I actually remember rave music coming from the UK, and one of my first encounters with rave music was through listening to the Prodigy. And there was this school dance, which I, for some reason, I got to host the music on that. So I brought a tape deck. My dad had a little mixer, and I had what was it? Maybe a little vinyl player. So without me knowing, I was curating the music. It was actually sort of a DJ gig. But I just remember playing the Prodigy, Everybody's in the Place, 12 times that night. And it was awesome. That was really just my first encounter of being able to play the music that I love.
And your age was?
12.
12.
12 at the time.
Okay. So when was the next time it happened? Or was it kind of like I'm hooked? I want to do every party I can find from this moment on?
No. So from there, that was just a one-off encounter. And from there on, fast forward, I was 15 years old. House music, quote unquote, broke through in the Netherlands. There were these big compilations coming out, the Turn Up the Bass compilations, house party compilations, they were called. I just remember doing a paper route at the age of 15, having that music on as a sort of like, giving me energy to go through these chores. This was the same year that I found out that a friend of mine who had an Amiga computer, he showed me my favorite track at that time. It was Pump Up the Jam by Technotronic, and he had it running on his Amiga tracker, but he showed me that he could mute the beats, or he could take out the chords. And so I said, hang on a second, this was 1992. I said, so you're able to make music on a computer? And I was amazed because I was always that one in the family that people actually made fun of. My brother is an amazing drummer. He is he can play the guitar and the piano, my dad as well. I can play a little bit, but not as good as them. So I always got laughed at, really. So when I found out that you could make music with a computer, I was like, so I can program all this stuff that's in my head? And it was right there and then that I knew that I wanted to stick a lot of time into learning how to produce and make tracks using the computer.
So I guess that this wasn't what you were at that point thinking you were destined to do, right? You're at school, you've got college coming up, your parents are thinking, oh, little Luke's going to go into this or that. What was the plan before music kind of reared and took over everything?
Oh, before music, my first talent in life is drawing, actually. And I always wanted to be a comic book illustrator. Always fascinated by superheroes and that sort of thing. So it was kind of like going there. Then after middle school, I set out to become a graphic designer, for instance. But at that moment, when I was 15 years old, then it didn't stop. It was actually, so I was doing some graffiti back then as well, got caught. And because I got caught, I was like, okay, so I'm not going to do this graffiti anymore. I'm going to focus on music more. But I started to make music on anything I could get my hands on, anything that just had a little sequencer or a key. I remember having borrowing a keyboard from someone that had a little sequencer recorder in there. And I thought, you know what, if I start layering beats and layering melodies, playing in a bass line, I could essentially make my own track. So I started playing the beats for about 3 minutes of a track of mine, and then for 3 minutes I would play some melodies over there, and then making my own tracks that way.
And this was, you were still 15, 16, so
yeah,
way before any thoughts of, well, doing anything as an adult, because you're still a kid.
Well,
so
I was actually kind of early with that. There was this one particular summer vacation. I was either 16 or 17, and my dad had a co-worker, and he had this big Korg M1 synthesizer, and he said he told me that, and he was like, "Are you interested in borrowing that for the summer?" And I'm like, "Well, if it's a professional synthesizer, maybe I can finally sound professional. So I was already syncing my music through the PC, hooked it up on the MIDI, ran through a couple of presets, and I found the Robin S organ in there. And I was like, man, this is the Robin S organ. It's here. And that summer I made about 12 demos having that same organ sound in there. I remember my dad bashing into my room at a certain point because I didn't leave my room the whole summer vacation. I was just making music. And he said, Luke, I'm worried you're not getting out. And I'm like, Dad, I'm taking this really seriously. Oh, what are you doing? And he's like, you got to find a real job. And from all these kids that are wanting to make music, what makes you think you can ever make your money with making music? And I got real angry and I said, you know what? You watch me. I'll prove you wrong. And it was there and then I set out to reach the top, really.
So, powerful story. So at this point, did he let you keep the synthesizer past summer, or did he get it back?
No, I had to give it back, which
Okay.
I was very sad about.
So what happened to these tracks? Did you get any interest? Did people pick them up? Did you start finding other people like you? How did you progress? Now you're deadly serious.
Yeah.
Now that you've got something to prove.
That's right.
What happened?
So now I had a demo tape, about 12 demos with professional sounding sounds on there. And there was this one instance where Dobra from Ski and Dobra, who is one half of Chocolate Puma, I found out that he used to go to the same high school as I was. He graduated 4 years prior than me, but there was the end of the school year ball, and he was DJing. He was already a famous DJ. He broke through with his tracks with As the Good Men. So we have this famous DJ coming to our school, and I'm having a demo tape ready. I'm like, screw it, I'm just going to give it to him. So there I was, barely 17 years old, coming up to him while the school play was. And I'm like, hey, I'm Luke. I'm from this school too. I make music too. Here's my demo. Can you listen to my demo? Super nervous. Scariest thing I've ever done. He was very kind. He accepted my demo. And so, hey, that's great. He has my music now. And then nothing happened. And I waited for a few months, and because I lived in a small village, through a couple of acquaintances, I found out his home phone number. Actually, it was his mom's home phone number because he was young as well. He was still living at his mom's. And I rang the number. I got his mom on the phone. I said, well, I'm Luke. I gave Gaston a demo tape 2 months ago. Did he listen to it? And his mom was very kind as well. She said, you know what? I don't know. Let me ask him and we'll see. So wait for 2 weeks. No response. I waited for 2 weeks more, and so I rang his mom again. I was like, so did he listen to it? And his mom was like, oh, yeah. So I did ask him. He didn't get to it yet, but let me get back to you. Waited for 2 more weeks. I got very antsy. Then I rang the number again. I said, listen, ma'am, this is the last time I'm just going to pester you. I just want some feedback, really. I just want to learn. Maybe, I did something wrong in them. I just want to progress, This is the last time I'm calling. If I don't hear from you, then that's it. And sure enough, 2 days later, he rang me back, and he's like, man, I'm so sorry. I was busy doing shows, flying internationally, whatever. I listened to it. And although I'm not completely convinced, because it sounds very much like beginner demos, I hear a talent in you. And you know what? Maybe you can come over to my house next week at night. We'll sit down and I'll give you some proper feedback. So he did that, and we started doing that on a regularly. It was super kind. And every time we had these listening sessions, he would give me examples of tracks that sounded great and which direction I needed to go to, how to EQ better, how to program better. And throughout a good 1.5 years of getting feedback from him, my musical producer skills improved massively, up to a point where he cleared out half of his studio had all this gear left that was doing nothing, sitting it. And they just brought it out to my bedroom at a certain point. So all of a sudden I had this massive amount of gear. I remember going to school with all these manuals, just reading through them. But all of a sudden I could up my production sound and make professional sounding tracks. And only a few months after that, I got my first record deal through him.
Wow. So is it something about the Netherlands that musicians find each other and support each other in electronic music? Because it seems to be, for a small country, punching way above its station with the number of influential people and producers and DJs that have come out of here. Is there something in the water here that just makes this more possible?
You know what's interesting? There's two things about Dutch people. They're, number one, they're very friendly, but number two, they are very honest, brutally honest. What I love about us Dutch DJs and the Dutch scene in general is that we all interact as if we're friends. We're not competition. If you would call any Dutch DJ out through the door here right now, he would never say like, I hate Luke, I'm not going to talk to him. There's never anything like that. It's always very friendly, and we're a close little clique, and it has always been that way. And sharing knowledge as well, hanging out with each other, I think that has been one of the most powerful things. And so if you make a track and it sucks,
they're going to tell you.
They're going to tell you, and you can improve.
Well, talking about sharing knowledge, it's something that I started off by saying that you are passionate about teaching and about sharing and about being there for people. And you have, over the years, through a forum that you had for a long time, and you still do, you've kind of had a lot of DJs informally come through your doors who've gone on to great things. I mean, name some of the people who you've met in forums who've gone on to be superstars.
Yeah, there's many. Steve Angelo, Nicky Romero, Bingo Players, Dyro, Loopers, GTA, Avicii, Afrojack, and there's so many more. This
is part of what we were saying, isn't it? Yeah. But you were at the heart of this. So tell me how you got into, informally coaching and teaching and hanging out with these guys, because you've made it start.
I do have to say that at a certain point I made myself a promise. So it has to do with Gaston treating me the way he did and my own urge for this information or feedback. I promised myself that if I would ever make it, I would always be open to help anyone approaching me. So at a certain point, we had my brand new website up, and there was this guest book. On the guest book, people could ask me questions, and I was monitoring the guest book, and at a certain point, producer questions came in. I was like, oh, this is fun. I can help those people out. I know the answer. This kind of spread like wildfire in the Dutch talent pool, and at a certain point the guest book became that much of a thread you couldn't even read through it anymore. And so that's when we hooked up my forum onto my website, and that's when everything really started to take off, where we had international kids jumping in. Mind you, by 2001 I only literally had my following in the Netherlands. So there were just a lot of Dutch producers coming on. But as soon as international people got word of that, I had people from all over the world asking me for advice.
So people know you as a DJ. People do know you as a producer as well. But you've always seen yourself very much as a producer first, right? The DJing almost a tack on, the DJing almost a thing that came through being a producer. And yet you are hugely passionate about DJing. You're hugely passionate about how it should be done, and a little bit despairing sometimes about how it is being done by fellow producers. So where did the passion for DJing start? Was it all the way back at the beginning when you played that first kind of curated DJ set, or when did DJing start showing its face in your life?
DJing got into my system after about 5 years of being a producer. 4 years. I remember my girlfriend back then buying a set for her to start DJing with. 2 decks, 2 belt drives, what was the Sound Lab?
The good old Sound Lab.
Good old Sound Lab. She had a little Newmark mixer, a 2-channel mixer with that, and she gave it one go, literally one go. Had all the setup set up, one go. The first mix she failed. She threw her headphones in the corner of the room and said, "I am never going to be able to do this." And I stood there looking at those decks. This was in my little producer area as well, like a week gone by, and I just looked at it thinking, you know what? This might actually help my producing, because I have no clue how long the beats need to be for DJs to mix in well. I don't know how, what the needs are for a DJ. You know what? I'm just going to find out. I'm just going to start mixing. And for me, mixing was super easy. I got it instantly where, the amount of bars are similar as in production. So mixing in, mixing out, BPM, and it was super easy. And it got so addicting. And I'm that guy. So if I get a new piece of gear or a new thing I dive in, I want to go all the way into it. I want to get to know everything about it.
She must have loved you.
Well, that's why she's my ex now.
Look at him. How dare he?
Yeah.
So,
no, actually, and this is a funny story. Throughout those years of me learning how to DJ, we, because her and I were very much fan of going out and going dancing, listening to our favorite DJs. So I would have mixtapes on, which I recorded from radio or whatever of our favorite DJs. So sometimes I would slip my mixtape in there. And whenever she heard a screw up, she would say, "Oh, this is done by you, probably." For years, she did that. And this fueled me up to get my mixing that straight.
Oh, so when she heard a screw up on anyone's mix, it was
so at a certain point, I was out of the screw ups and she couldn't recognize the difference.
Okay. So another example of you being told by someone that you either can't do this or shouldn't do this or won't manage this. And you thought, no,
you watch me.
I'm going to prove it otherwise. So your DJing began not playing anything like the music you're playing now. It actually began as a techno DJ.
Well, there's a little bit of a curve there because formerly the music I started to produce and make was either kind of like Prodigy or more like MK. So I always give MK the recognition of being one of my absolute first examples. But a lot of my early 90s type of house music sounded like MK. I would buy records by Kerry Chandler, DJ Sneak. So I was more into that housey, garagey type of vibe. But then I got obsessed by energy in beats, energy on the dance floor, where I was trying to find out where that properly sits and how I could run with that in my sets and in my productions. And by going heavier and heavier and grabbing that energy and still trying to keep it housey, I ended up being a techno DJ.
So the thing with techno is it's not just the type of music, it's a type of mixing. And now if a DJ who knows about DJing watches you DJing, they're going to think, hang on a second, Luke DJs very much in the style of a techno DJ, but the music's different. So back then, when you kind of thought, this is the kind of DJing I want to do, where were your influences? Who was it that showed you how to DJ techno? Where was your first break? Where did you start to learn about that scene?
Well, interestingly enough, a lot of people, when they see me DJ and they have no clue about me, they think my roots are in hip-hop.
Okay.
And hip-hop DJing, and which they're not. They're purely from techno. And I just remember going to this festival in the Netherlands, Dance Valley Festival, and Carl Cox by then had already put some of my tracks on his mix compilations, and I was finally going to see him live. He was up on stage. He had 3 decks going, 3 vinyl decks, and all of a sudden he's grabbing a vocal chop and he's scratching it on the upbeat. And I had no clue what was going on, and I thought, wow, this is another level of DJing that I wanna get to as well. So I started listening to people like Jeff Mills and Dave Clark. Jeff Mills, who was a wonder on the 3 decks as well, and Dave Clark, who was an old DMC champion. And so these type of influence marked my techno mixing as well. We had Frankie Bones from New York, which I somehow managed to get a CD, a mix CD from overseas, and he was doubling up techno tracks and doing all these. Well, now I know these are hip hop tricks, but back then I had no clue. I thought these were techno tricks. And so, yeah, this has always been very much a staple of what I wanted to become as well.
So your first techno gigs in techno clubs, your productions are starting to do well.
Yeah.
Carl Cox has got them on his releases and so on. So you're starting to get a name for yourself at this point. But I'm guessing not really playing outside of the Netherlands at this point. Where did you get your first break?
Well, actually,
as a DJ.
Yeah, actually, I had 0 shows in the Netherlands, and my first break was in the UK. My first ever international gig was my first ever paid gig as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was in Reading, in the UK. Checkpoint Charlie. Shout out to the guys there for booking me. They indeed saw my name on the Carl Cox compilation. They heard I DJ'd as well. I was very honest with them. I was like, well, I've only been DJing for about 8 months now. And they were like, great, we'll book you for the club. Come over to play. And so they asked me on October. And so by January, I had been DJing for a year.
Yeah, a bit longer.
a little bit longer. But I just remember walking up in that club, seeing the crowd in front of me. And I got so nervous. It was terrible. I was terrified going on the decks. And trying to put my first needle on the record was absolutely horrendous. Shaking hands and sweaty armpits. But I managed. The mixes were extremely long because I wasn't comfortable behind the decks still. And yeah, so that's where the proper learning curve started of me wanting to do better than that.
And how long was this kind of stage of your career when your sound is techno, and your music you're making is techno? How long did that last for, and kind of at what point did that change?
Well, I held on to techno for a good couple of years. Actually, I had my breakthrough in the Netherlands about 3 years after, 1999, at Awakenings Festival. I got the opportunity to close off the night. I think I was playing after Umek even, who was coming up back then as well. I had the 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. slot of the night or in the morning.
That's a hardcore slot, sir.
It was crazy, but it was that crazy, and I was never that much of a partier. I literally had a good night of sleep, had breakfast, brushed my teeth, and then went on to my show. Because as a visitor, I had visited this party a lot. I knew exactly what was needed on the dance floor. And so I put all my experience in there, played an incredible set. Mind you, I only knew this because people were literally trying to climb up the DJ booth to find out my name.
Wow.
And
this really is a turning point.
Yeah. And so after that, I got signed to a booking agent out here in the Netherlands, and I could do a ton of shows here being a techno DJ. I had quite a successful international techno career as well, being signed by Billy Nasty's booking agency, being backed up by people like Dave Angel and still by Carl Cox as well. But at a certain point, I couldn't produce techno anymore. The thing is, if it was anything other than sounding like a washing machine in a loop, trying to layer some vocals on there or some chord progressions, it wasn't techno anymore in my ears. So I got stuck, literally stuck in a loop. And at a certain point, I wanted to give up making music. I wanted to give up DJing. And I said to myself, I need to break out of this mold. And from here on, I choose music. I'm going to make whatever I want. And coming from a musical family, I always had the urge. I wrote lyrics as a kid, for instance. I knew about chord progressions. And I wanted to do more than just make loops. So I broke with that, completely kind of restarted my career and got more into like the Daft Punk and Electro Clash corner of the begin 2000s.
So you're making a living from DJing at this point. There's no day job. There's no alternative income source. That must have been quite a risk for you to say, you know what, I'm going to press the reset button at this point.
Absolutely. And I got real lucky at a certain point, but because it was only months until I started making that new type of music that Virgin Records in the Netherlands heard a bunch of those things, and they were very interested into signing me. And all of a sudden, I find myself making video clips and bringing out an album with Virgin over here, and crossing over in the mainstream, and doing all these shows for people. That the thing with me is I try in my techno career, I tried playing a couple of mainstream tracks or poppy things, doing live mashups with vinyl for a techno crowd. They weren't having it, and playing before a mainstream crowd and playing a few techno tracks, they were absolutely fine with that. So I really enjoyed that freedom, and I never set out to make a lot of money with this, purely just because I wanted to have that creative freedom. But all of a sudden, everything worked out for me in the Netherlands. Mind you, because of this, I lost my international career for a moment.
Okay, so you regained your international career quite spectacularly in the years to follow that. And I guess some people might have only first come across you at that point, when there was the whole kind of second explosion of dance music, when the United States finally got it big time. And you've kind of ridden that wave. And I think a lot of people will be very aware of the career you've had alongside the big names in the EDM scene. But as a kid from the Netherlands who's got his personal life going on as well, you know, what was going on with your life away from DJing at this point?
I was always very much focused on my career, very much put my career first. I had this relationship with the girl that bought the turntables from high school on. We were high school sweethearts. So at quite an early age, we started to think about kids. This must have been almost 10 years into our relationship where we said, you know, we need to have some kids now. So my first son got born when I was 24. And my second son when I was 27. But all in the meantime, I was really focused on showing everyone, like my dad or my family, that I was going to be successful. And one of the reasons I was so obsessed with the DJ skills as well as was I wanted to be one of the best DJs in the world. And I went hard for that, putting family on second place. And so this resulted in a heavy argument of me and my wife growing apart. And at a certain point, I came back from certain travels. I was getting real successful by then as well. Broke through in America. And at a certain point, she gave me an ultimatum. It's either me or the music. And if it's going to be me, she said, you need to have an office job. And I said, well, if I'm going to get an office job right now, I'll guarantee you I'll probably kill myself in 3 months. This is what I love doing. So I chose for the career. So got out of that marriage, and I was full on into DJ mode after that. And mind you, I do have sympathy for my ex-wife. I speak to her on a daily, but she never chose for this guy that's successful. She was actually with me when I was a broke teenager, and she actually lended me the money to buy my first studio equipment because I was that broke, and she had savings. So all this time, I told her, I'm sorry I'm not here. I'm sorry I'm investing my time into this forum right now. I was on the forum for 1.5 hours every single night instead of next to her on the couch. I'm sorry I'm investing all this time, but you wait. I will become successful, and we will have enough money to support my family, and I am going to do this. So when big success finally hit, she gave me that ultimatum, and I just moved along like a steam train still.
It must have all been going very quickly, right? At this point, you haven't really got much time to think anyway. At this point, the gigs are coming in, the money's coming in, the productions are going out. Your life is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
if you'd have had more time to think about what was going on, do you think it might have eaten you up a little bit more? But there was no time for thinking. It was just like forward, forward, forward.
And the thing is, at a certain point, I started doing 150 shows worldwide in a year. And at a certain point, and these are facts, like from all the Dutch international artists, even DJs like DJ Chucky and DJ Tiesto, I was the one that did the most shows internationally in 2010. There's a little graphic about that. So I didn't have much of a life, really. And I was partially still drinking as well. So whenever I got back home, I would have a hangover for 2 days.
It's the worst. It's the worst when your family think that actually that's all you're doing.
Yeah.
Don't see the work.
Spend one day with the family, and I'd be off again.
So, I mean, you can see this from both sides, right?
Absolutely.
At what point did you feel like you proved what you had to prove?
Well, see, and that's it. So I do want people to be very aware of this, people who are chasing success. The real success in chasing success is that you get a bigger platform and the ability to share your experiences with each other. It's not about the money. It's not about the fame. But in the meantime, you're under the impression that if you hit a certain amount of money you'll bring in, then you're going to be happy, right? Then everyone's going to be happy. And that's been such a smoking mirror. It's so untrue. In the end, all this effort has made me able to share this experience with people, to develop my DJ skills and to record a course with you guys, being able to actually teach these things we mention in the course, giving other people that hope that they can do it, that they can start living a life, or that they are able to inspire people. So in my second marriage, because this after 2010, this happened, I met an American girl. We married at a certain point, but we were living lavishly because the money was there. And we spent it ridiculously as well. And up to a point where we're getting out of the second marriage at a certain point because we grew apart as well, which in turn has to do with me choosing the career again over the marriage. Which has currently left me without much money, really, because everything has been spent.
So lucky that you've come to the conclusion that actually this isn't what life's about. So it seems to me like you've had a roller coaster journey that's got you to a place now that's a lot better and a lot more kind of where you didn't know it was the way you wanted to end up, but you're quite glad you did. I mean, you're now about to be married again, and I'm sure this is going to be the one that kind of carries the stability forward.
Absolutely.
And you've got a more balanced work-life thing going on, but you're still very driven. I've spent a lot of time with you recently. You're still very focused. Yeah. It's like there's nothing random. There's nothing there's no drifting going on. But that focus isn't all on work right now. Is that correct? So where's the balance come from? What's the solution to this kind of drive to just be working all the time?
Yeah. No, I still have it though, and I still catch myself. And last year, only with the passing of Avicii and then Hardwell going into his, how do you say that? He's currently on pause, right? Just made me realize, man, why am I running so hard and running so fast all this time? And soon enough, after 2 months after that, after Hardwell's announcement, I had one of my big anxiety attacks as well. And mind you, in my career, I've had a burnout at age 21, burnout at age 31, and a burnout at age 41. So this was only last year.
Yeah, we've got 9 years to go.
I know.
Don't do it.
And because okay, so prior to last year, I was the guy that told the office, vacation, just keep on emailing me. That's fine. I don't need days off. Monday through Monday, just keep on contacting me. I'm there. I'm always finishing off work. Go ahead. And so up until that point, and I couldn't do it anymore. I called my manager. I said, I'm going to be offline for 2 days. Because I really have the feeling I can't do it anymore. Nothing, really. So we spoke about that. We restructured the way I handle things, the way I need to tackle the deadlines from the office. And I started utilizing a Sabbath day, 1 day off a week. And that has helped me so much, I must say. But still, I catch myself running and being that steam train. And sometimes, when my fiance is talking to me, I really need to stop myself, really need to focus on listening to what she is saying now instead of thinking, oh, I need to put that kind of a compressor on the mastering. What did you say, dear?
So we're now bang up to date. We're now, you kind of ridden the whole EDM thing. That's kind of dying off now, and that's kind of in its own way settling down into something new. Where do you see your next kind of 10 years? And of course, there's going to be nothing at all going wrong at age 51. We know that. Where's your next 10 years? How's it going to be different to the previous 10 years? What have you got? You've got your Kung Fu. Of course, you're a dad. You have a young daughter as well as your kind of teenage kids now. Where does it all fit together? What's your plan? What's your dream for the next 10 years?
Well, ideally, I have this touring schedule set up in my head that I would love to do 1 weekend on, 1 weekend off. So I can have 1 weekend with the family, and going into this third marriage now for the next, life. That's gonna add up. That's gonna add up for sure. We're actually planning on more children there as well. So this is my opportunity to finally get it right. And people see me as a dedicated dad, but by all means, I'm not perfect. All I want is to be a family guy and to have a family life. So this time around, I really need to nail it. So family is number one right now. And in terms of the career, although I keep on working hard, the motto is work smarter. Because essentially, and I'm a control freak like that with my vlogs as well, but even with my tracks, I hate sending my tracks out to a mastering engineer, for instance. My vlogs, I want to do it all myself. My social media, my Twitter, my Instagram, I want it to be me. So yeah, it's going to be another learning curve, which hopefully I'll tackle smarter now.
And who do you look up to who's got that right? In DJing or out of DJing? Who are the people you're looking to now thinking, you know what, that's a model, that's a role model for me. That's someone who's got this balance right.
Well, it's none, like there's no famous people I can name who.
No, but I mean,
parents or so my parents are divorced, for instance. But for instance, my fiance's parents, Ashley's parents, they are a wonderful role model of how I want to be as an elder. They're not old. They're not that old, but as a couple that's been together for a long time. My good friend Eric, his mom and his dad, they are old. And I just remember starting dating with Ashley and seeing them. We were at my friend Eric's birthday party, and we had a good chat. Mom and dad compliment each other while talking. At a certain point, mom steps up because they're leaving. Dad comes in with a jacket for her, and he's putting the jacket onto her. And I'm like, I want to be that. Like, how many years have you been married? 45? And you're still taking care of that woman that way instead of, you old hag, you can get your jacket. I want to be that. And so, yeah, I made the promise to myself and Ashley to always make effort for love like that.
Well, I can't think of a better place to round this one off than with an aspiration like that. Luke, you've been characteristically honest and forthright, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for joining us on Tales from the Dance Floor.